Amanda Wells stood at the observation deck of the research vessel Starlight Seeker, her eyes fixed on the strange readings on her tablet. The dark emptiness of space before her seemed to shimmer, like heat waves rising from hot pavement. Something was different about this section of space, and after 20 years of studying ancient ruins and space anomalies, she knew this was big. "Chief Wells, you need to see this," Robert Foster called from his station. The human diplomat's voice carried an edge of excitement that made Amanda look up from her work. "The energy readings are getting stronger." The ship's sensors were picking up patterns that shouldn't exist in normal space. The void ahead of them rippled with faint traces of blue light, barely visible to the naked eye, but clear as day on their instruments. "Tell me what we're looking at, Robert," Amanda said, walking over to his station. Her short gray hair reflected the soft blue glow of the ship's instruments. "It's like nothing in our database," he replied, pulling up multiple charts on the main screen. "The energy signature matches no known civilization, past or present. But here's the strange part. There are traces of human engineering in the pattern." This caught Amanda's attention. As the chief archaeologist of the Galactic Historical Society, she had studied every known human artifact from the pre-Unity era. But this was different. The energy readings were older than any human technology she had ever encountered. The ship's communication system crackled to life. "Chief Wells, this is Captain Rogers. We're getting some unusual reactions from our Zexatheri guests." Amanda frowned. The Zexatheri were the oldest of the elder races, ancient beings who had achieved space travel when humans were still fighting with swords. Having them aboard was supposed to be a courtesy, but now— "I'll be right there," she responded, nodding to Robert to follow her. In the ship's conference room, 3 Zexatheri sat perfectly still, their crystalline bodies giving off a faint purple glow, a sign of distress in their species. The tallest of them, Ambassador Zykel, turned their faceted head toward Amanda as she entered. "You should not be here," the ambassador's translator device conveyed in flat tones. "This sector is forbidden. The seals must not be disturbed." Amanda shared a quick look with Robert. "Seals? Ambassador, we weren't informed of any restrictions in this sector. Our charts show it as unexplored space." "Because it was meant to be forgotten." Another Zexatheri elder spoke, their crystals pulsing with darker shades of purple. "The dark space barriers were put in place before your kind joined the collective." The room's tension was broken by an urgent beep from Robert's tablet. His eyes widened as he read the incoming data. "Amanda, you need to see this. We're picking up metal signatures. Massive ones." The main screen flickered to life, showing deep space scans of the area ahead. Hidden behind the strange energy patterns were shapes, huge shapes. As the computer enhanced the image, they could make out the distinct forms of ships. Not just any ships, warships, ancient human warships. "That's impossible," Amanda whispered. "These designs, they're from the Lost Fleet era. But those ships disappeared thousands of years ago." Ambassador Zykel rose, their crystalline form now pulsing with bands of deep red. A color Amanda had never seen in their species before. Not disappeared. Sealed. Sealed away with great purpose and at terrible cost. The ship's sensors suddenly blared in alarm. The energy patterns ahead were changing, shifting like a tide pulling back before a wave. On the screen, one of the massive shapes moved slightly, metal groaning across the vacuum of space. "We must leave." Ambassador Zykel's translator crackled with urgency. "The barriers weaken. What was sealed must remain sealed." But Amanda couldn't look away from the screen. Through the static and distortion, she could make out markings on one of the ancient hulls. Beneath the scars and scoring of countless battles, there was a name, U.S. Harbinger. "Robert," she said quietly, "send a priority message to the Collective Council. Tell them we found something that rewrites everything we know about human history." As the message was sent, the energy patterns flared brightly, and for a brief moment, Amanda thought she heard something, like a distant echo of battle drums, calling across the centuries from behind a dark space barrier. The true question wasn't what they had found. It was why these mighty ships had been locked away in the first place. Laura Bennett's hands shook as she handled the ancient data crystal. The archives of the HFY Story were kept in a vast underground complex on their homeworld, stretching for miles beneath the crystalline surface. Most researchers spent their entire careers without seeing even a fraction of what was stored here. But today was different. "Are you sure about this?" she asked the HFY Story archivist standing nearby. The crystal being's usual purple glow had dimmed to a worried blue. "The Council has granted you access to the war records," the archivist's translator hummed. "But we advise caution. Some knowledge is sealed for good reason." Laura carefully placed the crystal into the reader, the air around her filled with holographic images, star maps, battle reports, and video fragments from a time when humanity was something very different from what it was today. The first recording made her gasp. A massive human battleship, its hull painted with red stripes and bearing the name US Defiant, fired weapons she had never seen before. The energy beams didn't just damage their targets, they seemed to tear holes in space itself. "This can't be right," she muttered, checking the date stamp. "These records are from 15,000 years ago. We didn't have this kind of technology back then." More images flew past. Fleets of human warships, their designs unlike anything in modern databases. They weren't the sleek, peaceful exploration vessels of today's human fleet. These were weapons of war, built for a single purpose: to fight something terrible. A new recording started playing. The quality was poor, full of static and interference, but Laura could make out a human admiral speaking to what appeared to be a council of elder races. "You don't understand what we found out there." The admiral's voice crackled through time. "It's not just another enemy. It's something worse, something that changes you, changes everything it touches." Laura leaned forward, trying to catch every word. The admiral's uniform was stained with what looked like blood, and his eyes held a haunted look she had never seen before. "The rage takes over," he continued. "Whole crews, whole planets, lost to it. The only way to stop it is to—" The recording cut off abruptly. "There should be more," Laura said, turning to the archivist. "Where's the rest of it?" "Many records were destroyed," the archivist replied. "In the days of the Great Sealing, much was lost, or hidden." Laura moved to the next file. This one showed something that made her blood run cold. A human colony world. But something was wrong. The people were fighting each other, tearing at each other with bare hands. Their eyes glowed with an unnatural red light. The date stamp on the next record jumped forward several months. The same colony world appeared again, but now it was surrounded by human warships. They weren't defending the planet. They were quarantining it. "Computer, cross-reference these coordinates," Laura commanded. The system beeped as it processed her request. "Location match found," the computer responded. "Coordinates align with current dark space barrier breach point." Laura's tablet chimed with an urgent message. It was from Amanda Wells, the chief archaeologist who had found the sealed fleets. The message was brief but chilling. "The barriers are failing. Whatever's back there is trying to get out." With trembling fingers, Laura opened another file. This one showed a massive operation. Hundreds of human warships forming a wall in space. Behind them, thousands of civilian ships fled toward safer space. The HFY Story and other elder races were helping coordinate the evacuation. They weren't running from a war, Laura whispered as understanding dawned. They were running from an infection. Something that turned people into. She couldn't finish the thought. The final recording showed the human battle fleets moving into position around what would become dark space. The elder races were working with them, using ancient technologies to create the barriers that would seal off that sector of space. But it was the last image that would haunt her forever. A human captain speaking directly to the camera, his message meant for future generations. "If you are seeing this, then the barriers are failing. Don't try to save us. Don't try to bring us back. What we've become, what we had to become to fight them. We sealed ourselves away for a reason. Some prices are too high to let others pay them. Laura switched off the reader with a shaking hand. She had to warn the others. The human battle fleets weren't sealed away as prisoners. They were the last line of defense against something much, much worse. Keith Richardson had never seen anything like it. As a military historian, he had studied every class of warship humans had ever built. But the vessels now stirring behind the failing dark space barrier belonged to no known fleet. That's the third seal breaking in the last hour, one of the sensor operators called out. Through the main viewport of their research vessel, they could all see it, crackling lines of energy splitting apart like broken glass. The massive form of the U.S. Vengeance slowly turned in space, its ancient engines glowing with a deep red light that shouldn't have been possible after thousands of years of sleep. Behind it, the HMS Retribution was also showing signs of power returning to its systems. "Look at the size of those weapon mounts," Keith said, zooming in on the hull of the nearest ship. "Those aren't normal guns. They're reality crackers, weapons designed to tear holes in space itself." Amanda Wells stood beside him, her face pale in the emergency lighting. "How many ships are out there?" Keith checked the latest scan data. "At least 300 capital ships that we can see, maybe more behind them. But that's not what worries me." "What do you mean?" He pointed to a pattern painted on the hull of the Vengeance, a red stripe crossed with black marks. "That's a quarantine warning. These ships weren't just sealed away. They were containing something." The ship's comm system crackled. "This is Captain Rogers. All hands to emergency stations. We're detecting power surges from the sealed fleet." Through the viewport, they watched as more of the ancient vessels began to light up. Their massive forms were scared and pitted from battles fought long ago, but their weapons were slowly coming online. "They're responding to something," Keith said, studying the data readings. "Some kind of signal." Suddenly, all the screens in the command center flashed red. A message began repeating across every display. "Conti in eminenti buriaci, detcted, inficitio pur toxio alpha. All ships is assumi battle stations." The fleet's eye is still active, Keith realized. It's running old protocols. But why now? The answer came in the form of a transmission that cut through all channels. The voice was distorted, aged by thousands of years of digital decay, but the message was clear. "This is Admiral Helena Stone of the Emergency Containment Fleet. To any humans receiving this message, get out. Get out now. The barriers are failing, and what we've been holding back, it can't be allowed to escape." Amanda grabbed Keith's arm. "Look." Through the breaking barriers, they could see something moving in the darkness beyond the fleet, something that seemed to drink in the light around it. "All research vessels, pull back immediately," Captain Rogers ordered. "We're leaving a probe to monitor." His words were cut off as a massive energy surge erupted from the sealed fleet. The ancient warships were moving into formation, their weapons charging with that strange, reality-cracking energy. "They're not attacking us," Keith said, understanding dawning on his face. "They're forming a battle line, just like they did thousands of years ago." The ship's AI suddenly announced, "Warning. Unknown energy signature detected beyond the barrier. Biological contamination protocols engage." Through the viewport, they watched as the massive form of the U.S. Vengeance turned its broadside toward the darkness. Its weapons began to glow with an intensity that made the sensors overload. "Send everything we've seen to the Collective Council," Amanda ordered. "They need to know what's happening here." Keith couldn't take his eyes off the ancient fleet as it came to life. The ships were moving with purpose now, taking up defensive positions. Whatever they had been guarding against for all these millennia was still out there, still trying to break free. "They sacrificed everything to keep it contained," he whispered. "An entire battle fleet, sealing themselves away with the horror they were fighting." The final barrier began to crack, And in the darkness beyond, something screamed. The ancient fleet's time of sleeping was over. The war they had fought so long ago was about to begin again. Susan Parker stood before the collective council, her heart pounding. As the only human member of the council, all eyes were on her. The great crystal hall was packed with representatives from every elder race, their worried whispers filling the air. "The ancient fleet is awakening," she said, her voice echoing in the chamber. "We need access to the sealed files. We need to know what we're dealing with." The HFY Council leader, a towering crystal being named Exythe, pulsed with deep red light. "We cannot. Those files were locked away for a reason. Even we do not have full access to them." On the massive screens behind Susan, live feeds showed the evacuation of 3 star systems nearest to dark space. Millions of beings were fleeing their homes, creating the largest movement of people since the Great Migration. "Look at these people," Susan said, pointing to the screens. "They're running scared, and they don't even know what they're running from. We owe them the truth." A new alert flashed across the screens. More seals were breaking. The ancient human battle fleet was fully awake now, their weapons charged and ready. The Myrthan representative, an elder of the cat-like race, stepped forward. "When your ancestors came to us, they were different. Not the peaceful humans we know today. They were warriors, changed by something they had found." Susan checked her tablet as another message came in. The research vessel near dark space was sending new data. "The fleet's AI is broadcasting warnings. Something about an infection protocol." The chamber erupted in panic. The word infection caused several council members to back away from the screens. "The old stories are true then," an ancient Vorkath elder said, its tentacles writhing in agitation. "The blood madness has returned." "Blood madness?" Susan asked. "What are you talking about?" Before anyone could answer, the main screen crackled with static. A new transmission was cutting through all channels. The face that appeared was human, but wrong somehow. It was a recording from the sealed fleet, thousands of years old. "This is Captain Sarah Wade of the U.S. Vengeance," the woman in the recording said. Her eyes were strange, too bright, with a reddish tinge. "The infection is spreading through the crew. We can't stop it. We can only contain it. The fleet, we have to seal ourselves away. It's the only way to protect everyone else." The recording cut out, but its effect on the council was immediate. The elder race's representatives were backing away from the screens, their fear obvious. "Now you understand," Keith said softly. "Your ancestors were not sealed away as punishment. They chose imprisonment to protect the galaxy. They had seen what the infection could do." Another alert sounded. The ancient fleet was moving, forming a battle line against something in the darkness beyond the breaking seals. "You're saying they infected themselves?" Susan asked, horror dawning on her face. "Fighting whatever's out there." "Not exactly," the Myrthan elder said. "They found a way to control it, to use its power against itself. But the price." The elder couldn't finish. A final message flashed across Susan's tablet. It was from the research vessel's probe, still monitoring the fleet. Energy readings were off the charts. The ancient ships were powering up weapons that shouldn't exist. "We need to help them," Susan said, turning to face the council. "They've been fighting this battle alone for thousands of years." "You don't understand," Keith's translator crackled. "Your ancestors became something else. Something between what they were and what the infection would have made them. They sealed themselves away because they knew they could never come back, never be human again." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The mighty human battle fleet, sealed behind dark space, hadn't just been guarding against some external threat. They had become the wall between the infection and the rest of the galaxy. A wall built of transformed humans who had sacrificed everything, even their humanity, to keep everyone else safe. And now that wall was breaking. Daniel Cooper worked quickly, his fingers flying over the ancient data core he had found in the deep archives. Around him, Emergency alarms blared as more evacuation orders went out to nearby star systems. Time was running out. "Play that last recording again," he called to his AI assistant. The holographic display flickered to life, showing a scene from thousands of years ago. In the recording, a human admiral stood in a room full of elder race representatives. His uniform was torn, and strange red lines crawled up his neck. "The infection doesn't just kill you," the admiral was saying. "It changes you, makes you stronger, faster. But the rage never stops." Daniel paused the recording and zoomed in on the admiral's eyes. They glowed with a faint red light, the same red light they were now seeing in the awakened fleet's windows. His communicator buzzed. It was Amanda Wells. "Daniel, please tell me you found something." "The fleet is fully awake now." "I found everything," he replied, his voice shaking. "The truth about why they sealed themselves away. It's not what anyone thought." He sent her the files he had decoded. The real story was hidden in fragments across hundreds of records, scattered to keep anyone from learning the whole truth at once. 15,000 years ago, humanity had been exploring the edges of known space when they found something. Not a weapon or an alien race, but a force, a cosmic infection that turned living beings into rage-filled monsters. "It spread so fast," Daniel said, reading from the decoded files. "The infected became stronger, nearly immortal. But they lost their minds to anger and violence. Whole colonies fell within days. The regular military couldn't stop it. Normal weapons didn't work against the infected. That's when humanity made its desperate choice. They found a way to partially control the infection," Daniel continued, his voice growing quieter. "Volunteer crews. They let themselves be infected, but used special drugs and mental conditioning to keep their minds. They became something new, not fully human anymore, but not mindless monsters either. These partially infected crews became humanity's last defense. Their ships were specially built to channel their enhanced strength and rage. The red glow in their eyes was a sign of what they had become, warriors who could fight the fully infected on their own terms. But there was a cost," he read. "The transformation was permanent. They could never go back to normal life. The rage would always be there, just below the surface." Amanda's voice crackled over the comm. "The quarantine. They weren't just keeping something out. They were keeping themselves in," Daniel finished. "The fleet sealed itself away because they knew they could never live among normal people again. They became the wall between the infection and the rest of the galaxy." New alarms started blaring. The main screens showed the ancient fleet moving into attack formation. Beyond them, in the darkness of sealed space, something was stirring. "Wait," Daniel said, noticing a pattern. "These energy readings from the fleet, they're not random." He ran the numbers through his computer. The fleet's power signatures were pulsing in a specific pattern, a pattern that matched human brainwaves during intense concentration. "They're not mindless," he whispered. "After all these thousands of years, they're still fighting, still holding on to their humanity, even if they can never be human again." His computer chimed with a final decoded message. It was from the fleet's commander, recorded just before the seals went up. "To those who find this, don't mourn us. We chose this. Humanity faced a choice. Watch the galaxy fall to mindless rage, or sacrifice a part of ourselves to save everyone. We chose to sacrifice. We became the guardians, the wall against the darkness. And if the seals ever break, remember, we're not the monsters. We're the only ones who can fight them." Daniel sent the message to the council immediately. They had to understand. The fleet wasn't a threat to be feared. They were guardians who had sacrificed everything to protect the galaxy. And now, as the seals broke and darkness crept out of deep space, they were awakening to fight once more. Lisa Martinez stood on the bridge of her research vessel, watching in horror as the darkness leaked through the breaking seals. Her ship, the Star Seeker, was the only civilian vessel that hadn't retreated from dark space. She couldn't leave, not after what she just discovered. "Captain, we're getting a signal from the U.S. Vengeance," Her communications officer said, It's using old Earth military codes. The message came through broken and static-filled, but Lissa could make out the words. They were repeating the same warning over and over. It's breaking free. The hunger spreads. Stand clear or be consumed. Show me the scan data from beyond the fleet, Lisa ordered. The main screen lit up with sensor readings that made no sense. The darkness wasn't just empty space. It was alive somehow. Her science officer spoke up. Captain, I've decoded more of the old fleet's databanks. The infection. It's not a disease. It's an entity. A living darkness that feeds on rage and violence. On the screen, they watched as the ancient fleet moved into position. The ships were huge, their hulls marked with battle scars and warning symbols. Energy readings showed their weapons charging, strange devices that could tear holes in space itself. Look at their crew readings, Lisa said, pointing to the data. Those ships are running with only 10% of their normal crew. They've been fighting for thousands of years, standing guard with skeleton crews. A new transmission cut through their communications, this one clearer than the last. The face that appeared on the screen was human, but changed. Red lines crossed the captain's skin, and her eyes glowed with an inner fire. This is Captain Rachel Stone of the U.S. Vengeance, the woman said. To any ships in range, what you're seeing is the enemy we gave everything to contain. The darkness doesn't just kill, it infects, changes, turns everything it touches into weapons for its hunger. The transmission crackled as Captain Stone continued. We found a way to fight it. We used its own power against it. The price was our humanity, but the alternative was watching the galaxy fall to mindless rage. Lisa's sensors screamed a warning. The darkness was taking shape now, forming into something massive, something hungry. That's why they sealed themselves away, Lisa realized, speaking to her crew. The fleet didn't just fight the darkness. They found a way to contain it. They used their own infected bodies and ships as a living wall. Through the viewport, they could see the U.S. Vengeance moving forward. Its weapons were fully charged now, glowing with the same red energy that marked its crew. Behind it, the rest of the fleet formed a battle line. Captain Stone. Lisa called over the command channel. Let us help. We can evacuate your crews. Find a way to. No. Stone's response was sharp. We can never leave these ships. The infection is part of us now. We're the only ones who can fight it, contain it. We chose this fate. The darkness was spreading faster now, reaching out with tendrils of pure shadow. Where it touched normal space, reality itself seemed to warp. All ships, fall back, Stone ordered. We've held this line for 15,000 years. We'll hold it for 15,000 more if we have to. Lisa watched as the ancient fleet began to move. Their formation was perfect, practiced over millennia of endless guard duty. The red glow of their modified weapons grew brighter, matching the gleam in their crew's eyes. Send this footage to the Collective Council, Lisa ordered her communications officer. They need to understand. The fleet wasn't sealed away as punishment. They're not prisoners, they're guardians. The U.S. Vengeance fired its first shot. The beam of red energy cut through the darkness, making it scream in ways that shouldn't be possible in space. The battle was beginning again, just as it had thousands of years ago. This time, though, the galaxy would know the truth. The blood-stained fleet, sealed behind dark space, hadn't been a danger to be contained. They were all that stood between the light and the hungry dark. Brian Williams faced the Collective Council, his eyes fixed on the massive screen behind him. It showed the ancient fleet engaged in battle with the darkness that had broken through the seals. The U.S. Vengeance led the charge, its weapons cutting red lines through space itself. We have a choice to make, Brian said, his voice firm. Our ancestors sealed themselves away to protect us. Now they need our help. The council chamber was silent. Representatives from every elder race watched as the battle unfolded on the screen. The darkness was massive now, taking shapes that hurt the eyes to look at. Susan Parker, the human council member, stood up. The fleet's power is failing. 15,000 years of constant guard duty has drained their resources. They can't hold the line alone anymore. The HFY Theory Council leader, Scythe, pulsed with worried colors. What can we do? We cannot risk the infection spreading. Brian pulled up new data on the screen. Our scientists have studied the fleet's transmissions. We can't cure them. The change is permanent, but we can help them fight. He showed them the plan. Modern ships, modified with the same technology the ancient fleet used. Weapons designed to tear holes in reality itself. And volunteers, humans willing to undergo the same partial infection that the fleet's crews had chosen so long ago. You cannot be serious, one of the elder race representatives said. You would choose to become like them, to give up your humanity. They never lost their humanity, Brian replied. They sacrificed part of themselves to save everyone else. That's the most human choice there is. On the screen, they watched as the U.S. Vengeance took a direct hit. Dark energy coursed across its hull, but the ship kept fighting. Its crew, changed but not broken, refused to give up their endless watch. We've already got volunteers, Susan added, from every human world. They know what they're choosing. They know they can never come back. The chamber erupted in argument. Some council members wanted to run, to evacuate every system within reach of the darkness. Others wanted to try sealing it away again, even though the data showed the old seals were failing completely. Brian raised his hand for silence. Look at them, he said, pointing to the fleet. For 15,000 years, they'd stood guard, fighting, watching, protecting everyone else from what they became. We can't abandon them now. A new transmission cut through the chaos. Captain Rachel Stone's face appeared on the screen, red lines glowing under her skin. The darkness is stronger, she reported. We've contained it for so long, but we're tired. So tired. Help is coming, Brian promised her. Just hold on. The council voted. In the end, it wasn't even close. They had all seen the truth now, seen what humanity had sacrificed to protect them all. Within hours, the first wave of volunteers began their transformation. Brian watched as they received the modified infection, their eyes beginning to glow with that same red light. Modern ships were quickly upgraded with the reality-tearing weapons, their crews ready to join the ancient fleet. Remember, he told the volunteers, you're not becoming monsters. You're becoming guardians, just like they did. The U.S. Vengeance and its sister ships fought on as the reinforcements prepared. 15,000 years of duty, and they had never wavered, never broken, never given in to the full rage of the infection they carried. As the first modern ships moved into position alongside the ancient fleet, Captain Stone sent one final message to the Council. We chose this fate to protect the galaxy. We became something different, something between human and horror, to stand against the darkness. And now we're no longer alone. The battle would continue. The darkness would never stop trying to break free. But now the ancient fleet had help. New guardians would share their endless watch, their sacrifice honored at last. The elder races finally understood why humanity's blood-stained battle fleets had been sealed away. Not as monsters to be feared, but as heroes who had given up everything to save everyone else. The wall between light and dark would stand. Stronger now. Together. Forever.